Howdy, and welcome to part 4 of our video lecture series. We are now looking at the demand side of the economy. Having looked at the basics of our macroeconomics, our introductory stuff, having looked at that in a fair amount of detail, what we're going to do now is introduce you to some models that are used in macroeconomics to try and get a better understanding of the key variables that we are interested in macroeconomics. If you remember, that's things like growth, inflation, unemployment, right? These are models to help us understand how these things come about and how they might change over time. So obviously, because these are models, we are going to be spending, well, we could potentially spend a lot of time on any one of them, and that's not really the intention of these videos. So what I've done, having introduced you to the video series that we did previously where Chris was the presenter, I will essentially just guide you through what I've put together here in this mind map, which is a summary of that content, and then direct you to those videos where you will get more detail and examples worked through on a board, and essentially very thorough stuff. Whereas this video, or these videos from now on, are going to be they're going to be quite a summary of everything that we're doing, and so hopefully they should be fairly short in duration, again with links to the other videos made in the mind map. But I've also put those videos up on the website, so at any time you can either access those videos by going to the mind map and playing around with it, or if you'd like to, you can just go onto the website and watch any particular video that you want, focusing on any aspect that you want. I would encourage you to do that, because obviously with this model building and understanding these models, the more you interact with them, the more you get an idea of how they work, how they change, the better you're going to understand what they're all about. So without further ado, let's look at our first model, which, if we're starting with looking at the demand side, is going to be aggregate expenditure. Having looked at our aggregate expenditure model, we're then going to derive our aggregate demand curve. So first of all, aggregate expenditure, we're dealing with spending, so let's just go over some spending basics quickly. We will relook at the, thank you very much, Prezi Notice. We will first relook at the circular flow, mention the variables that we will be discussing, then talk in depth about consumption, saving, and investment. So, circular flow. Say's law says that supply creates its own demand. In other words, any income on the one side of our circular flow diagram becomes an expense on the other side of our circular flow diagram. That is what Say's law is predicting. Supply creates its own demand. But in the 1930s, there was something known as the Great Depression, and during this period there was sustained unemployment. If you go, you can read a lot more about this, and your textbook gives you some interesting facts about the Great Depression. But the key thing is that Keynes comes along and says we need to look at the demand side, not just the supply side. This sustained unemployment, the only thing that economics at that point in time can tell us is that eventually we will, in the long run, move back to full employment. Keynes turns around and says, yes, well, in the long run, we're all dead, so we need to do something a little bit more timeously than just waiting around. Okay, so he says demand side. If we're talking about demand side, well, what are we looking at? Remember, income, expenditure, output. In our circular flow, these are all the same thing, and we measure them with the letter Y. With government involved, we also have something called income tax, right? We have two different types of income tax: autonomous tax and induced tax. So an autonomous tax, for example, a lump sum tax, is just a value. It's set and it's some number. Government taxes you 50 Rand a month, whatever it is. An induced tax, however, like a tax rate, changes depending on how much income you earn. So you might get a tax rate of, say, 30% of your income. That's the difference between an induced tax and an autonomous tax. Right. So if we have income and we have income tax, we then have something called disposable income. And disposable income, YD, is simply Y minus T, or Y minus taxes. YD is equal to Y minus little t times Y. Okay? We're not going to focus on tax rates at the moment. We're just going to talk about lump sum taxes. So until I say otherwise, we are only dealing with capital T, lump sum taxes. Then we've got consumption C, saving S, investment I, government spending G, and net exports. Something we haven't yet looked at is this savings side of things. Okay, so these variables are our basic expenditure approach equation variables. Y equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. In fact, this equation comes from this model that we're going to be talking about. So, consumption. In fact, let's leave it there and come back with another video.